Hi guys, so today we're continuing to look at triangle theorems, and this time we're going to look at the mid-segment of a triangle. Okay, so what is a mid-segment? Let me actually not use orange. So here, mid-segment of a triangle is a segment connecting the midpoint of two sides. Okay, every triangle has three mid-segments. We see that right here. Right. And so again, what a mid-segment is, it goes from midpoint to midpoint. Right? So this is an example of a mid-segment. It's the middle of BA, right? So BD and DA. D cuts it in half. So BD, DA. D is the midpoint, and it connects to the midpoint on the other side. Right, so BE, EC here, E is the midpoint, so it goes from midpoint to midpoint, and that is what a mid-segment is. Okay. And what we know from the triangle mid-segment theorem is that if a segment joins the midpoints of two sides, the mid-segment, so this here is just a fancy way to say mid-segment. Okay. So this here just means mid-segment. Okay? So if you have a mid-segment, the mid-segment is parallel to the third side and is half its length. Okay? So what we see, DE is the mid-segment here. It is parallel to that third side. Here it is. It's parallel to this third side, which in this case happens to be AE. And what we know is that the mid-segment is also half of AC, half of that third side. Okay? So that's nice and simple enough. So let's see it and do some example problems with it. Okay? So let's flip. Okay. Look at example 1 here. Okay. So DE is a mid-segment. Okay. So here's the mid-segment, DE, DE, DE. And what we know, mid-segment is half of the third side. Okay. So mid-segment in this case is DE. It is going to be half of the third side. So you need to make sure you know where the third side is. Okay, so this is the third side. This is the third side. This is the third side. It also happens to be parallel. Okay. So let's get started. Okay. So that means here, X, my mid-segment, is half of my third side. Here, my mid-segment 5 is half of my third side X. Right. My mid-segment here, I don't know. Okay, but here, what a mid-segment does is it's midpoint to midpoint. So E is the midpoint. Right? And so if AE is 6, that means EC is also 6. Okay. For this one, since X, the mid-segment is half of the third side, X is half of 26, that means X equals 13. Okay. Mid-segment is half of the third side. My mid-segment here, 5, is half of my third side, which in this case is X. Okay. To get rid of the half, okay, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. Half and 2. Half is the same thing as dividing by 2, so the times 2 gets rid of it. X equals 10 here. Right. And here, since this is a mid-segment, it's midpoint to midpoint. That's the definition of mid-segment. So since this distance is 6, this distance is 6 as well. Okay. So here we're going to use the mid-segment theorem. Okay. So J is a midpoint. Okay. I know that because xj is congruent to jy. So if these two are congruent, that would make j the midpoint. Okay. I know that YL and LZ is congruent. So YL is here, LZ is here. So that would make L a midpoint. Okay. And then XK, that's here, and KZ are congruent. So that means K here is the midpoint. Okay. So then the lines connecting the midpoints are known as midsegments. Okay. So let's get started. So here I have JK. Okay. So JK is right here. Okay. This is a midsegment because it goes from midpoint to midpoint. It is going to be parallel to the third side. So here JK is parallel to YZ. Let's look at the next one. So JL here, JL is right here. Okay. This is a midsegment as well because it goes from midpoint to midpoint. Okay. It is going to be parallel to the third side, so this is the third side. So JL is parallel to XZ. The next one here we have is XY. Okay, so XY is the third side actually. So it's going to be parallel to one of the midsegments. So it's going to be parallel to this midsegment here. This is LK or KL. So the next one here, it wants to know what YJ is congruent to. So YJ, let's first find it. So YJ is here. Okay. Because J is our midpoint, YJ has to be congruent to XJ. Okay. And since this is the third side, it is going to be congruent to our mid-segment here, which is LK. Okay. And again, this goes back to the fact that our mid-segment is half of our third side. So LK, this mid-segment here, is half of this. And since this is the midpoint, that means half of it is that JY or YJ we saw here. Next one here is JL. Okay, so that's my orange one from earlier. Okay, so JL, this is a mid-segment. It is half of the third side. This is its third side. So half of this, since K is the midpoint, half of it would be XK and KZ. So here, JL is congruent to XK and KZ. Okay. And then the last one here is JK. JK is here. This again is a mid-segment because it goes from midpoint to midpoint. So mid-segment is half of our third side. So half of this would be where the midpoint is. So that would be YL and this part here, LZ. So JK is congruent to YL and LZ. Okay. And that's it for today. Have a great rest of the day. Bye, guys.